The bridge of the Zephyrian command ship, Eternal Harmony, trembled as Admiral Kethvar stared at the data streaming across his neural interface. 3 standard cycles had passed since they first scanned the human vessel, Indomitable, and the nightmares had only grown worse. "Admiral," whispered his aide, Second Mind Lithara, her normally pristine silver skin now mottled with stress patterns. "The Psychological Warfare Division has submitted their report. 17 more analysts have requested mind-cleansing procedures after reviewing the human data." Kethvar's 4 eyes narrowed as he absorbed the information. The Zephyrian Collective had conquered 47 star systems without a single ship lost to enemy action. They were masters of predictive warfare, calculating victory through superior intelligence and flawless strategy. But these humans, these impossible humans, had shattered every assumption. "Show me the tactical assessment again," he commanded, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones of barely controlled fear. The holographic display materialized before them, showing the human warship in painful detail. On the surface, it appeared crude, angular where Zephyrian ships flowed like liquid metal, brutal where their vessels sang with elegant purpose. But beneath that rough exterior lay something far more disturbing. "Computer, highlight psychological warfare capabilities," Kethvar ordered. Red markers exploded across the human ship's hull, weapon systems that served no tactical purpose except to instill terror. Boarding pods designed not for efficiency, but for maximum psychological impact on defenders. And the ship's name, Indomitable, painted in letters 3 meters tall, across the bow as if daring the universe itself to break them. "They want us to be afraid," Lithara observed, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," Kethvar corrected, his skin rippling with realization. "They expect us to be afraid. There's a difference." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's consciousness, the living neural network that connected every Zephyrian vessel to the collective. But even that familiar sound seemed different now, tainted with an emotion the collective had rarely experienced. Uncertainty. "Admiral," called out Navigator Prime Deathmos from his station, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." Kethvar's blood chilled. They had maintained a distance of 50,000 kilometers from the human ship, well beyond their weapons range according to all calculations. The humans shouldn't even know they were there. "How is that possible? We're using full stealth protocols." "Unknown, sir. The transmission is unusual." "Define unusual." Deathmos hesitated, his tentacles dancing nervously over his control surfaces. "It's not directed at us specifically, Admiral. It appears to be a general broadcast on all frequencies." "Answer. It's not a message." "Then what is it?" "Music." The word hung in the air like a poison cloud. Music was unknown to the Zephyrian Collective. Their communications were pure, efficient transfers of data and emotion through neural links. The concept of organized sound for pleasure was as alien to them as breathing underwater. "Play it," Kethvar ordered, though every instinct screamed against it. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and suddenly the command center was filled with something impossible, a human voice, raw and powerful, backed by instruments that seemed to growl and scream with mechanical fury. The words were in the human language they had learned to decode, but the meaning transcended translation. "We are the warriors in the night. We are the flame that burns so bright. When darkness comes to steal your soul, we stand as one, we take control." Several crew members stumbled backward from their stations. One analyst collapsed entirely, overwhelmed by the foreign concepts flooding her mind. The music wasn't just sound, it was a weapon, designed to invoke emotions the Zephyrian mind wasn't equipped to process. "Turn it off," Kethvar commanded, but found himself unable to look away from the tactical display showing the human ship. Even at this distance, he could feel something watching him, studying him, measuring his fear. The music cut off abruptly, leaving a silence that felt heavier than the noise had been. "Sir?" Lithara whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't think they're trying to communicate with us." "Then what are they doing?" I think they're hunting." Chapter 2. The Human Heart of Darkness aboard the UES Indomitable. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the ship's war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the alien vessel maintaining its careful distance. Her dark eyes reflected the cold blue light of the tactical screens as she studied her unexpected audience. "They've been watching us for 3 days," reported Commander Marcus Webb, her executive officer. His scarred face bore the marks of boarding actions on 7 different worlds. "Same position, same distance. Whatever they are, they're cautious." "Cautious is good," Chen replied, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had earned command through blood and fire. "Cautious means they're thinking, and thinking means they're afraid." Lieutenant Sophia Reyes, the ship's xenopsychology specialist, looked up from her analysis console. Despite being only 26, she had the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much. "Captain, the behavioral patterns suggest a highly organized intelligence, possibly a hive mind or collective consciousness. The way they move, the way they maintain formation, it's too perfect for individual decision-making." Chen nodded slowly. "What else?" "They're advanced. Maybe centuries ahead of us in some areas, but..." Reyes hesitated. "Speak freely, Lieutenant." "They don't understand us at all. The scans we've detected, the way they're analyzing our ship, they're looking at us like we're a puzzle they can't solve, like we don't fit their model of how intelligent life should behave." Commander Webb leaned against the tactical table, his prosthetic arm gleaming under the harsh lighting. "Maybe that's because we don't." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Explain." "Look at this ship, Captain. Look at what we've built." Webb gestured to the displays showing the Indomitable's specifications. 18 months ago, this was a civilian cargo hauler. Now it's a warship that's fought its way through 16 systems. We've got weapons cobbled together from mining equipment, armor plating welded over structural supports, and a crew that includes everyone from former pirates to theological students. Your point? My point is that we're not supposed to work. By any reasonable standard, this ship should have been scrap metal within a week of the invasion. We're undermanned, under-equipped, and running on spite and caffeine. But here we are, deep in enemy territory, because we're too stubborn to quit. Reyes nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly what I mean. They can't analyze us because we operate outside logical parameters. We do things that don't make sense tactically, strategically, or psychologically." "Like broadcasting music into space?" Chen asked. "Especially that." Reyes pulled up an audio analysis chart. "I've been monitoring their biosignatures during our concerts. Captain, they don't have music. They probably don't have any form of artistic expression at all. When we play human music, their stress indicators go through the roof." Webb grinned, showing teeth that had been broken and rebuilt more than once. "So we're accidentally psychologically torturing them with classic rock?" "Not accidentally," Chen corrected. "Sergeant Torres, what's the status on our special project?" From the corner of the room, a massive figure stepped into the light. Gunnery Sergeant Isabella Torres stood nearly 2 meters tall, her body a roadmap of scars from conflicts across 3 star systems. Despite her intimidating appearance, her voice was surprisingly gentle when she spoke. "The boys in engineering have outdone themselves, Captain. We've got speakers rigged throughout the hull, plus some modifications to our communication array. If you want to get their attention, we can broadcast at volumes that'll rattle their hulls from 50,000 clicks." "And the other modifications?" Torres' smile was predatory. "Let's just say if they decide to board us, they're in for some surprises. My Marines have been working around the clock on what we're calling the Welcoming Committee." Chen studied the alien ship on her screens. It maintained its position with mathematical precision, never varying more than a few meters from its chosen coordinates. Everything about it spoke of calculated perfection and flawless organization. "They think they understand warfare," she mused. "Clean, precise, predictable. They've probably conquered dozens of species using the same playbook: superior technology, overwhelming force, and calculated intimidation. But we're not playing by their rules," Webb observed. "No, we're not." Chen turned to face her officers. "They're studying us like specimens in a lab trying to figure out how we work, but they're missing the most important thing about humanity." "Which is?" Reyes asked. Chen's smile was cold as the space between stars. We don't break. We bend, we adapt, we improvise, but we don't break. And when someone pushes us too far... She paused, looking at each of her officers in turn. Well, then we push back. What are your orders, Captain? Torres asked, already reaching for her weapon. For now, we wait. Let them watch. Let them study. Let them try to figure us out. Chen turned back to the tactical display. Because while they're trying to understand us, we're learning about them. And when the time comes to act... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Every person in that room had seen what humans were capable of when they stopped holding back. Outside the ship, the alien vessel continued its patient observation, its crews working frantically to decode the mystery of human nature. They would learn, eventually. But by then, it might be too late. Chapter 3. The Weight of Knowledge in the depths of the Zephyrian ship. Senior analyst Vortham worked alone in his private study chamber, surrounded by data crystals that glowed with sickly light. For 63 cycles, he had served as the collective's premier xenobiologist, cataloging and categorizing the species they encountered. He had seen savage beasts with primitive weapons, highly evolved civilizations with technology that rivaled their own, and everything in between. But the humans defied every category. Vortham's primary sensory organ, a cluster of crystalline structures that could perceive reality across 17 different spectrums, focused on the latest data from their ongoing observation. The human ship continued its slow patrol pattern, occasionally broadcasting those horrifying sonic attacks they called music. Computer, display psychological profile summary for species designation, human. The hologram that materialized made Vortham's secondary heart skip several beats. Where other species showed neat, organized trait matrices, the human profile was chaos incarnate. Contradictory behavioral patterns, impossible emotional ranges, and decision-making processes that defied all logic. Individual human subjects demonstrate capacity for extreme violence followed immediately by acts of self-sacrifice, the computer's neutral voice reported. They form emotional attachments that override survival instincts, yet show remarkable adaptability when those attachments are severed. They create art during warfare, mourn their dead while planning revenge, and display protective behaviors toward offspring of other species. Vortham manipulated the data display, focusing on specific incidents they had observed during their 3-day surveillance. Show behavioral analysis, human designation Torres. The display shifted to show the large human female they had identified as the ship's primary warrior. Bioscans revealed extensive physical trauma, old wounds that should have ended her military career. Yet she continued to function at peak efficiency, training younger humans in combat techniques while simultaneously caring for what appeared to be a small earth mammal she had smuggled aboard. Contradiction, Vortham muttered to himself. Professional. Killer maintains emotional attachment to non-essential life form. Display human designation Reyes. The young human scientist appeared in the hologram. According to their analysis, she possessed intellectual capabilities that rivaled trained Zephyrian researchers. But instead of pursuing pure knowledge, she had chosen to serve aboard a combat vessel, applying her gifts to warfare and survival. Contradiction. Superior intellect choosing primitive application. But it was the human leader, Captain Chen, who truly disturbed him. Her psychological profile was a maze of paradoxes that made Vortham question his own sanity. She displayed the calculated ruthlessness of a born predator, yet their scans had detected her risking her life to save a single crew member during their last engagement. She made decisions based on incomplete information, yet somehow achieved success rates that suggested perfect prescience. Computer. Theoretical question. Could these behavioral contradictions be deliberate deception? Negative. Bioscans confirm emotional authenticity. Humans appear incapable of complete deception regarding their emotional states. That was perhaps the most disturbing revelation of all. The humans weren't pretending to be contradictory. They genuinely were walking paradoxes, containing multitudes, of conflicting impulses that somehow resolved into effective action. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication from the bridge. Vortham activated the neural link, feeling Admiral Kethvar's presence flood his consciousness. Report, Senior Analyst. The War Council convenes in one standard period. I need your assessment. Vortham organized his thoughts, preparing to share information that would shake the foundations of Zephyrian understanding. Admiral, I must request additional time for analysis. These humans, they operate outside our models of intelligent behavior. Explain. They make decisions based on factors we cannot quantify. Emotion, intuition, what they call gut feelings. They plan for failure while expecting success. They mourn their dead while celebrating their lives. Analyst, Kethvar interrupted, his mental voice sharp with impatience. I need tactical recommendations, not philosophical dissertations. Vortham felt his throat sacs constrict with anxiety. Admiral, with respect, you cannot separate the tactical from the philosophical when dealing with humans. Their combat effectiveness stems directly from their psychological contradictions. Elaborate. They fight hardest when victory is impossible. They take greater risks to save others than to save themselves. Vortham paused, struggling to translate concepts that had no Zephyrian equivalent. They seem to derive strength from suffering, Admiral. Pain motivates them rather than deters them. Silence filled the neural link for several long moments. When Kethvar's presence returned, it carried undertones of deep unease. Are you suggesting they are a warrior species? No, Admiral. Something far more dangerous. Vortham activated a new data display, showing the human ship's internal structure. They are a species that becomes warriors when necessary, but never stops being everything else. That ship contains soldiers who write poetry, scientists who sing lullabies, and engineers who pray to invisible deities while repairing weapon systems. Impossible. Yet observed and verified, Admiral. They maintain their full emotional and intellectual range even in combat situations. Where we achieve efficiency through specialization, they achieve effectiveness through integration. Another long pause. Then, recommendation? Vortham closed his primary sensory organ, feeling the weight of his next words. Admiral, I recommend we withdraw immediately and classify this system as permanently forbidden. Unacceptable. The High Council has invested too much in this campaign. We will find a way to defeat them. Admiral, please. I have studied 17 species conquered by the collective. In every case, we succeeded because we understood our enemies better than they understood themselves. But these humans... Vortham's voice trailed off as he stared at the data crystals surrounding him. I fear they understand themselves better than we ever could. The neural link severed abruptly, leaving Vortham alone with his terrifying knowledge. Outside his chamber, the great ship continued its patient observation, its crew unaware that their greatest analyst had just discovered something that could destroy them all. Humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were a fundamental challenge to everything the Zephyrian collective believed about intelligence, warfare, and the nature of existence itself. And in 18 standard periods, the War Council would expect him to find a way to defeat them. Chapter 4. The Dance of Predators. Captain Chen stood in the Indomitable's observation deck, watching the alien ship through the reinforced transparent aluminum that formed the forward viewing port. The vessel hadn't moved in 6 hours, hadn't even adjusted its position by so much as a meter, yet she could feel the intensity of their observation like a physical weight. They're getting desperate, she said quietly. Commander Webb joined her at the viewing port, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. The synthetic brew was bitter and barely resembled the real thing, but it was hot and contained enough caffeine to keep the bridge crew functioning. How can you tell? He asked, offering her one of the cups. Chen accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping her fingers around the warm ceramic. 6 days of observation and they still haven't made contact or taken any aggressive action. That's not the behavior of a confident predator. Maybe they're just thorough. No. Chen shook her head, watching the alien ship's perfect positioning. Thorough implies they know what they're looking for. This is something else. This is confusion. As if summoned by her words, Lieutenant Reyes appeared in the doorway, a data pad clutched in her hands and excitement radiating from her small frame. Captain, I think I've figured out what they're really doing. Chen and Webb turned to face the young xenopsychologist who was practically vibrating with discovery. They're not just studying us, Reyes continued, her words tumbling over each other in her eagerness. They're trying to construct a predictive model. Every scan, every observation. They're feeding data into some kind of analytical system, trying to figure out how to defeat us. But that's just it. It doesn't work with us. Reyes activated her datapad, displaying a complex graph. I've been analyzing their scan patterns, and they keep returning to the same systems over and over. Life support, weapons arrays, propulsion, all the standard military targets. But they're completely ignoring our mess hall, the rec areas, even the chapel. Chen raised an eyebrow. The chapel? Father Martinez holds services every morning. 43 crew members attend regularly, including some who weren't religious before the invasion. The aliens scan right past it like it doesn't exist. Because to them it doesn't, Chen realized. They're looking at us through the lens of their own psychology. Pure efficiency, logical decision-making, rational resource allocation. Webb was beginning to understand. They can't comprehend why we'd waste resources on non-essential activities. Exactly, Reyes pulled up another display, and it gets better. Remember yesterday when engineering ran those diagnostics on the fabrication units? The ones that took 6 hours longer than necessary because Chief Ramirez insisted on hand-checking every component? I remember being annoyed about it, Chen admitted. Well, the aliens were completely baffled. They kept rescanning the engineering section, trying to figure out why we were performing redundant verification procedures. They couldn't understand that Ramirez was being paranoid because he cares too much about this ship to trust purely automated systems. Chen felt pieces clicking together in her mind. They're trying to defeat a version of us that doesn't exist. They're planning for a rational, efficient human military force, while we're actually a collection of barely organized chaos held together by stubbornness and spite, Webb added with a grin. Not chaos, Chen corrected. Something they don't have a word for, something that looks like chaos from the outside, but has its own internal logic. She moved back to the viewing port, studying the alien vessel with new eyes. Lieutenant, what would happen if we gave them what they think they want to see? Reyes blinked. I'm not sure I follow, Captain. They're building a model based on their observations. What if we fed them false data? What if we acted like the rational, predictable military force they expect us to be? Webb's scarred face broke into a predatory smile, and then hit them with the real us when they least expect it. Precisely. Chen turned to face her officers. How long would it take to stage a completely by-the-book military operation? Something so textbook perfect that it would confirm all their assumptions about human tactical doctrine? Reyes consulted her datapad, her mind racing through possibilities. Give me 4 hours to analyze their scan patterns and figure out what they expect to see. Another 6 to coordinate with department heads and set up the performance. Performance? That's what it would be, Captain. Pure theater. We'd have to suppress every natural human instinct and behave like perfect military automatons. Chen nodded slowly. Can our people handle that? For a few hours? Probably. It'll drive them crazy, but they can do it. And when they break character? That's when things get interesting, Webb observed. Because by then, the aliens will have committed to a tactical response based on false assumptions. Chen drained her coffee cup, feeling the familiar thrill of a plan coming together. Make it happen. And Lieutenant? Yes, Captain? Make sure Sergeant Torres knows what we're doing. I want her Marines ready for what comes after the performance ends. Reyes nodded and hurried away, already composing messages to department heads. Webb lingered for a moment, studying his captain's reflection in the viewing port. You know they might call our bluff, he warned. Force a confrontation before we're ready. Then we improvise. Chen's smile was cold and calculating. It's what we do best. Outside the ship, the alien vessel continued its patient vigil, its crews working frantically to solve the puzzle of human nature. They had no way of knowing that their subjects were about to give them exactly what they thought they wanted, and that in doing so, they would reveal just how little they truly understood about the species they were trying to defeat. The dance of predators was about to begin, and only one species truly understood the steps. Epilogue: The Sound of Silence. 12 hours later, the bridge of the UES Indomitable was a study in unnatural perfection. Every crew member sat at rigid attention, their movements precise and economical. Status reports were delivered in clipped professional tones. Even the background hum of conversation that normally filled the ship had been replaced by an eerie, efficient silence. Captain Chen stood at the center of it all, her posture military straight, her face an expressionless mask. To any observer, she appeared to be the perfect example of human military efficiency. Logical, predictable, and utterly rational. It was driving her crew slowly insane. Lieutenant Reyes sat at her station, her hands clenched so tightly around her stylus that her knuckles had gone white. Every natural human instinct screamed against the artificial behavior they were maintaining. Nearby, Navigator Kim kept checking his instruments with mechanical precision, when normally he would have been humming off-key folk songs while he worked. But the performance was working. Through the ship's sensors, they could detect increased activity aboard the alien vessel. Communication bursts between different sections suggested urgent conferences and rapid analysis. After 6 days of confusion, the aliens finally thought they understood what they were seeing. "Captain," reported Communications Officer Santos in a voice devoid of his usual warmth, "alien vessel is adjusting position. Moving to attack formation Beta 7. Chen nodded once, her face betraying nothing. "Acknowledged. All stations. Maintain current protocols." Inside, her heart was racing. The aliens were making their move, committing to a tactical approach based on their observations of rational human behavior. In approximately 17 minutes, they would discover just how wrong they had been. "Engineering reports all systems nominal," came another toneless report from the engineering station. Chen allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. Chief Ramirez had nearly broken character twice during the morning shift, his natural tendency toward colorful language barely contained. But the old engineer understood the stakes, and he was holding his tongue through sheer force of will. Tactical report: "Alien vessel has achieved optimal firing position. Energy signatures suggest weapon systems charging." This was it, the moment of truth. Chen took a slow, deep breath and made her decision. "All hands," she announced over the ship's communication system, her voice still perfectly controlled. "This is the captain. In approximately 60 seconds, I am going to give you an order that will save all our lives. When I give that order, I want you to forget everything we've practiced today. I want you to remember who you are, where you come from, and why we're out here." Across the bridge, she could see her crew tensing, preparing for what was coming. "I want you to be human." The alien ship opened fire, and Captain Sarah Chen smiled for the first time in 12 hours. "All hands, this is the captain," she said, her voice now carrying every ounce of warmth, determination, and barely controlled fury that had been missing all day. "It's time to show these bastards what they're really dealing with. Sergeant Torres, release the hounds." Throughout the ship, the artificial silence shattered like glass. Battle stations' klaxons wailed, but they were almost drowned out by something the aliens had never heard before: the sound of 400 humans dropping their masks and revealing the magnificent, terrifying chaos that lay beneath. In the engineering section, Chief Ramirez let loose with a stream of creative profanity that would have made a pirate blush as he rerouted power to weapon systems that shouldn't have existed. In the Marine quarters, Sergeant Torres was singing an ancient war chant while her soldiers loaded weapons that violated several interstellar treaties. And throughout the ship, the crew of the Indomitable showed their watchers what they had failed to understand. Humans weren't just warriors. They weren't just scientists or engineers or philosophers. They were all of these things at once, and when pushed to their limits, they became something greater than the sum of their parts. They became unstoppable. The battle that followed would be remembered in Zephyrian military academies for centuries, not as a tactical engagement, but as a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating an enemy you didn't truly understand. But that battle is a story for another day. For now, it was enough that the aliens had learned the most important lesson about humanity. Never ever assume you know what a human will do next, because even the humans themselves aren't entirely sure. The end.